boys and girls. Today we'll be doing 9.2, which is angle classification. I knew my daughter's wigs that we always buy her for Halloween would come in handy. We are going to do angle classification, which means finding the measure of an angle and then classifying it as acute, right, obtuse, or straight, which I know all of you can do, boys and girls. But sometimes you'll have to estimate what an angle is, which I think you'll be able to do easily. Make sure you pause and do your practice problems. Thank you and have fun. 9.2 angle classification. Something you've done for quite a few years, classifying an angle based on their measurement. There is some new concepts here that you may need to review, but overall I think it's a pretty common thing that you've done in the past years. Basically, you're going to be classifying angles and using obtuse, acute, right, and straight. Straight might be a new one for you. So let's start going over those. The first one, a straight angle, is 180 degrees. That's any straight line. Any straight line is 180 degrees. We've talked about this already this year, but that is called a straight angle. And so if I try and draw any straight line, not very straight, I know that it is 180 degrees. That is very important to know, especially later when we go off of that right angle and we say that this is 60 degrees, and I want to know what this is right here. You should always be able to figure that out, because if this is 180 right here, and I know every line is 180, and this is 60, I should be able to subtract those two and figure out what the missing angle is. 120 degrees. 180 minus 60. Okay? So 180 might be new, but that straight angle one is an important one to know, and that's the one we start off with. Next, we get to ones that you already probably know. Acute angles. Acute angles are angles that measure somewhere between 0 degrees and basically 89 degrees, not 90. Okay? So they can go anywhere between 0 and 90, but not 90, because we'll go over 90 in a second. So this one right here, you can see that is much smaller than 90 degrees. That's an acute angle. And this one's smaller than 90 acute angle. This one's a little bit smaller than 90 acute angle, and this one's smaller than 90 acute angle. And I know some of you remember it always, that acute is small and, oh, it's cute. Okay? I've heard many kids say that that's how they learn that. So, oh, cute. So that's a smaller one. And then you have the other one, obtuse, which is somewhere between 90 and 180. Remember, it's not 90, it's got to be more than 90, and it's got to be smaller than 180. We just said 180 is straight. So this one, bigger than 90, obtuse, big like a moose. Right here, obtuse, big like a moose, obtuse, big like a moose, obtuse, big like a moose. Okay, bigger than 90, smaller than 180. All right? And our last one is a right angle, which is a 90-degree angle. This is what most of the earth is made of with man-made things. We like to use those right angles in corners and almost everywhere. So 90 degrees, and you can always tell a 90-degree angle because we like to put that little box in there, and that box signifies 90 degrees. Even if it doesn't say 90 degrees, if you have that box in there, right there, that tells you that it is 90 degrees, that little half square. Okay? When that's what we're mainly doing today. We're going to go off of that a little bit down here. And we're going to go over the word perpendicular. Perpendicular are when two lines cross at 90-degree angles. And you can see these two lines. You got line DE, and it is crossing line AM at a perpendicular angle, and that's signified like that. That is the signal, or the what we write down when we want to show that something's perpendicular. It's this little thing right there. But it crosses at a right angle, and you can see the square shows that. Cross at a right angle. Those two lines are said to be perpendicular to each other. All right? Anytime two lines cross at 90-degree angles, it is perpendicular. All right? You can see that. This is the way most roads are made, if you think of it that way. On most streets in most towns, some towns like the old curvy roads, and they cross at what's called an intersection down here. Any intersection is in roads is when two lines cross and they don't cross at they might cross at 90 degrees, but any crossing roads are intersections. Usually, if they cross at 90, they're called perpendicular. But if they cross at any other angle, you can still call them intersecting. Like right here, two lines are crossing, okay? And they are said to be intersecting. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're perpendicular. If they're perpendicular, they'd have the little squares, but they don't. So they're intersecting. So these are intersecting lines. But one thing we have to learn is vertical angles. Vertical angles are opposite angles, and opposite angles are always equal in intersecting lines. So in this little diagram, vertical angles, well, B and D are vertical angles. They are opposite angles, and they have to be equal in intersecting lines. That's just the way it works. And right here, I have I have A and C. They are vertical angles. Why? Because they're opposite angles, and they are always equal. They have to be equal. So, let's go down here a little bit. Question. It says, what type of angle is 84 degrees? I would hope that you know that 84 is less than 90, so it is acute. All right? And let's look at this. What type of angle is this? If we look at it, we can say angle TUV or angle VUT. It looks like it's bigger than a right angle, but it's not 180 degrees, so we'd have to say it is obtuse. Okay? Next, what type of angle is 165 degrees? Ooh, that's got to be bigger, so it is obtuse. All right, I want you to pause the video for a second and tell me what type of angle all three of these are. I know that you can do that in about 2 shakes of the lamb's tail, which is pretty quick. Go ahead and pause it. And all right, hopefully you said that this one is right and this one is acute and this one is straight. All right. Now, let's go over a couple more things here. Tell me what kind of intersection is this right there? Okay, hopefully you said it is perpendicular because it is two lines intersecting at 90-degree angles, and I can show that just with one square. I don't need to make squares at all 4 corners, just one square. If I know they intersect at 90 degrees, it is called perpendicular. These lines are not intersecting at 90-degree angles. They are just plain old intersecting lines. So tell me which angles are vertical angles, which means they're opposite angles and they're equal. Please tell me which angles are vertical angles, which means they are opposite angles and they're equal. Hopefully you said A and B are vertical angles and they are opposite angles, which means they are also equal. And also angle D and angle C are vertical angles, opposite and equal. All right. And the last thing I want to go over, very important for you to know, how many degrees is that angle? Everyone should say 90 degrees. That little box always means 90. This is what we'll be doing today. I know that this is really a review for some of you, but it's definitely something we have to make sure that is in our head. Good luck. Ask questions if you need to.